Well, in fact, so far, the things that I said are like obvious. You're going to produce more if you have more technology, of course, if you have more capital, of course, and if you have more knowledge or better health conditions, of course. That's why some economists talk about these economic determinants or variables as just proximate factors of growth. But they think that the drivers are something else. Okay? And North and Thomas talk about them as the fundamental factors. Of course, if you have more of those things, you are going to grow more. But that is not the question. The question is, why? Well, there are many questions. Why some countries are much more innovative than others? Innovative is technology. Why they are making a bigger investment in technology? Why some economies invest much more in education systems than others? Why some economies are accumulating more technology or more capital, physical capital? Why they are doing that? Of course, they are doing that, they are going to get a higher output. But why they are doing that? And why other economies are not doing that? Okay. Now let's see some economic evidence to try to figure out what can be behind those decisions. For instance, an example that we are going to observe really easy, in fact was coming from the first map that I saw you. And it's coming about the fact that some countries in the tropic, they are normally poor economies. So, can be that the climate can be behind those decisions. No one wants to invest in those economies where a mosquito with the malaria doesn't die in winter time. Can be something related to that. Or it's the fact that it's really hard working in a place where the temperature is so high that it's difficult to manage that. So far, how is the geography of one economy something that is making a role? Also, the evidence shows us that coastal countries in general are richer than the other economies that don't have that characteristic. So, all of this is talking about just one thing, geography. Here we have different maps where we can see with more detail the difference in terms of income per capita or per person. And we normally observe that this part of the world is the poor part of the world. So it can be really related with that, with the climate. So in fact, in the literature, you are going to find like 3 different versions talking about what is behind growth. One of them are going to talk about geography, like a key factor for economic growth. And between those authors, for me, the most relevant probably is Diamond. So you need to know something about Diamond, okay? At least the name and what it's doing. Okay? Then also you're going to find people he's telling that the key is international trade. Because we said that coastal economies are richer, and one of the way of getting a higher international trade is by the coast. Also, it's in a way of getting more knowledge, more information from other economies. It's not just the own activity of international trade, but also the knowledge that you are getting from international trade. And other people say that is institution, the quality of the institution. Because when we're talking about institution, we are talking about universities like that, which is knowledge, which is human capital. We are talking also about copyright, what is giving you that feeling of being sure about your things, that no one is going to take your things from you. So justice, things like that. In fact, if we go to Adam Smith again, Wealth of Nations, he said that boomers and manufacturers can seldom flourish long in any state which does not enjoy regularly administrative of justice. It's really important. It's like the money is really a fair, or the money needs like confidence. If you don't have confidence in a place, no one is going to make me, and no one is going to make an investment in that place. And that is something that we observe in many economies in Africa. So that's why probably no one wants to make an investment in those economies, apart of other things. Well, okay, this is in the slide, but forget about this slide, because they are like a high level. Okay, it's like different empirical strategies to get estimation of each different factor. It's the same as this. Forget about that. Or this. So let's see the conclusion of Roderick et al. About these different aspects. But Roderick, I like him. He's working, I think, in Harvard, and he speaks Spanish, I think, because his wife is from Latin America, something like that. So he's quite connected also with people, I don't know why, but with people in Spain. So, well, let's talk about he and the other authors' research. Well, et al., I don't know if you mean, do you know what is the meaning of et al.? When we use that, is when, now we are talking about research. So when you are doing a paper for us is a scientific article, but instead of saying scientific article, we say paper. It can be done for different authors. Always that is higher than 2, we use et al. Instead of putting the name of all of them. So when here we have et al., it's because we have like at least 2 more authors behind. It's not just something coming from Roderick, but other authors also, okay? And this is the year of the publication. Well, they use 2 different data sets, one with 80 economies, while the other is 140, and then they want to evaluate the quality of these different aspects, and here we have part of the results. So they say that the quality of the institutions trumps everything else. So it's really important. The main conclusion is institutions. You need institutions. So once institutions are controlled for, when you're already considering the role of institution, integration has no direct effect on incomes. Integration here is international trade. Okay? You are more integrated when you have more international trade. So it's not going to have a direct effect on incomes. While geography has a best quick direct effect. So geography is important, but not so much as institution. Their main conclusion is institution is the key. Always we need to go to see which economies are here, also here, because that is going to give us also some information about the possible limitation of the research. Are you considering all kinds of economies or just part of one? So that is important. Okay. More. On the links among the determinants, they find that institutional quality, so it's not just institutional, it's quality, has a positive and significant effect on integration. So having good institutions is not just good for growing, but also for international trade or integration. And integration has also a positive impact on institution quality, suggesting that trade, which is integration, can have an indirect effect on income by improving institutional quality. So, as I told you, it's not that international trade is going to have a strong or direct effect in growth, but it's going to make better the quality of the institution. And that is something good for economic growth. So that's why these authors talk about integration as an indirect effect. And geography exerts a significant effect on the quality of institution. So it's like everything is connected, but the final effect is coming from institution. Nevertheless, don't forget that to have good institutions also is important to have a specific geography and good international relations. Well, we are going to talk about something different now. Okay? So that was just part of the knowledge that we have, like more recent. But now let's go back to physical capital. What's one of the elements that were behind growth, or productivity at least? In fact, here we are going to talk about a concept that you already know a little bit, that is the emission returns. In this case of physical capital, which is the opposite case to the one that we have in our international trade model. If you remember the fixed, it was the specific factors model. In that case, we have this kind of example. I'm talking about emission return to something. In that case, it was labor. In that case, we have two factors. Each of them use two goods. Each of them use two production factors. One was fixed, that's why the specific factors model. In one case, it was land, and the other case, it was a capital. Then in the long run version, it was a Heskerolin model, it was just capital, because land eventually is capital. But in that specific chapter, we observed something like this. Okay, so that's why I'm going back, just to make just so you trying to show you what is the difference with respect to this. Okay, so in that case, we have land, capital, and the thing that you can change from one sector to the other was labor. The thing that you found in that chapter was like, okay, having labor is good, but the improvement in the production, it wasn't constant. In fact, if you have capital, let's say capital, because here we have capital also, if you have a fixed amount of capital, just introducing more labor from the other sector, it will generate a marginal increase in production, but it was smaller and smaller and smaller. That was the diminishing returns of labor, because you were adding more and more labor, and you were observing the productivity of that worker. Here is different, it's just the opposite. Okay? Here is not one economy where labor goes from one place to the other, from one sector to the other, and labor changes. Here we are talking about a whole economy, while in the other case it was like more thinking about microeconomic terms, so industry level. Here we are talking about macroeconomic terms, so a whole economy, a whole country. So that means labor is fixed. It's the number of workers that you have, but you can increase capital. Saving money first, so to make an investment in capital, the first thing that you need to do is saving money and then buy machines. Okay? So, what is the thing that we are going to observe here? The same idea, but now the fixed production factor is going to be labor. So, the thing that we are going to observe is that labor, when you introduce capital, is really productive, really good. But as higher is the capital that is already in hands of the worker, lower is going to be that marginal increase of capital. Okay, so the whole thing that you're going to read here is talking about that thing. How is the way of making the graph that, or a visual representation of that? This cool. So the thing that we have here is physical capital per worker. It's like K over L. The thing that is going to change is the K, more capital per worker. Versus, the thing that we have here is productivity. Because it's real GDP per worker, productivity. The thing that we are observing, relationship positive, is you increase this, then the other is going to be higher, positive, right? If you go from A to B, more of this is more of the other thing, positive relationship. It's constant. No, the slope is not constant. In fact, as I usually use my hands, you can see this is the slope, this is here, so it's getting flatter. The meaning of that is changes here is going to have a lower effect here, as usual. This is the way of making the interpretation of this. So, the thing that we're observing is, at the very beginning, introducing physical capital per worker is really productive. You see? Here is 20,000, the output is 30,000. But if you add the same amount of physical capital, now that increase is going to be smaller. And once again, 12 more. 20,000 more, sorry. Then the output is going to increase, but in a much small amount. And this is the diminishing returns of physical capital per worker. So it's not something really new. The thing that we are changing the context. That's why we're going to talk about physical capital instead of labor. Things that can change can be behind any change of here. So the thing that we have here is how it's going to change the productivity when you introduce a change in this variable. But we know that productivity is not just physical capital per worker. It's also human capital per worker, it's also technology. In fact, if we have, for instance, a higher level of technology, better technology, the thing that we are going to observe is not going from one point to the other. That is just when this variable is changed. When you have more technology, breadth of technology, more technology, any kind of improvement, the whole productivity is going to increase. So instead of a curve like this, you're going to have 1 over the initial one. Why over? Because in the vertical is the productivity. So more up is more productivity, given any level of physical capital per worker. That is technology or can be any kind of improvement of human capital. The whole productivity is going to be higher. So that curve is going up because up means more real GDP per capita, well, per worker here, because we are talking about productivity. So this is the thing that we are observing here. So if you, in a certain way you want to taper off the effect of the diminishing return of this output, of this input, you have to improve capital, but at the same time you need to do something else to taper off that diminishing return effect. So let's talk about now this convergency hypothesis that is in economics. Now we have the tool for doing. What is that? Well, we can conclude that in a field. So we can conclude if we have two economies, one of them is really poor, that means that the amount of capital per worker is going to be small. Also, we have a different economy which is rich. So probably, but sure, it's going to have more capital per worker because it's a rich economy. The convergent hypothesis says that this poor economy is going to grow faster than the other. Why? Because a small increase in physical capital per worker is much more productive than in the other economy. So we should expect that the poor economy, the same amount of money invested in that economy is going to be, sure, more productive than in a rich economy. And it's something that you can observe in reality. There are many examples of that. So here we have an example of them. It was the case of Korea versus United States. During this period of time, from 1960 to 1990, both economies make an investment that was pretty similar in terms of GDP, so as percentage of the GDP, and even in that case, we observed that the growth of Korean economy was much higher than the case of United States. Well, that was an example, but in fact we have many different examples. Here is a different period of time, from 1955 to 2006. We have all of these economies, and in fact, Japan and Spain was the economies that with the lower level of income for economies, and the growth of these economies was the higher. Where United States, that was the big one by that time, was the one that suffered the lower growth in economic terms. So it was this case. So the thing that we have here, so it's really important to be able to understand its graph, okay? It's a tool that is going to give us a lot of information. So always be careful when you are analyzing anything like this. So the thing that we have here is real GDP per capita at the beginning, at the really beginning, 1960. You see, is dollars. Do you know what is this here? It's 2005 dollars. The meaning of this is like the prices that we are considering are these prices because it's a real GDP. So we need to know, or at least it's a good thing that when they are given real GDP, why not say the year, the base year. So the year for the prices, it was this one. And the thing that we have here is the real GDP per capita annual growth. So how was the evolution over the whole period? The thing that we find is like the richer economies are, we have here United States, so this was real GDP per capita at the very beginning, the first years of the studio. And we have like Japan, you see, is the one with the lower level of real GDP per capita, followed by Spain, followed by Ireland, and so on. What about growth? Outliers, Japan. The next one, Ireland, and then Spain. So you see, in fact, you can see like a negative relationship. This is a negative. As higher is this, lower is the other. You see, this is the high, this is the lower in terms of growth. So here we are observing that the convergence hypothesis is true, but this is not always the case. In fact, we can observe many other examples in which this negative relationship is not the case, like here. Well, in fact, here we have not just countries, but big areas. So that means that it doesn't work. No. It means that you need to consider more things. First of all, you need economies that are making any kind of investment. Otherwise, why they are going to grow? The key thing that is behind growth is investment. Physical capital, human capital, technology, anything. So if you are not making any kind of investment, by sure you're not going to grow. That is the first point. And also, more things that can be behind. Okay, you just have more example of that. We need to consider more aspects, as we said, the education level of the economy. Human capital is really important when you are introducing, for instance, just capital, physical capital, or technology. For instance, there have been cases in which, for any economy, they have decided to make an improvement of capital. Let's make an investment in this economy, try to get that this economy start to grow. So, a lot of machine to that economy. The theory said, higher is the volume of machines, capital, physical capital, the higher is the growth. Mistake. What was the problem? Many workers didn't have enough knowledge just to make that those machines start to work. Or, in the case that they are able to make the machines working, if the machine is broken, they didn't have any kind of engineer to fix the machine. So no, it's not always just a case of more capital per worker. Sometimes we need also human capital at the same time, especially when we are talking about technology. If you want to use that technology, you need people who is able to understand that technology, and that is combined by human capital. So that's why when we are observing the reality, we need to consider all these aspects, the quality of institution. As we said previously, in fact, education is coming from an institution which is this educational system. The university is an institution. We need those kind of things to make that the investment on capital makes sense. So that's why some authors, instead of just talking about the convergence hypothesis, they prefer to talk about the conditionate convergence hypothesis. That means considering two economies in the same conditions, if one is more rich than the other, or richer than the other, if you introduce the same amount of capital per worker, then you're going to have a higher effect in the poor economy. And that is something that you're going to really observe in the reality. Well, sometimes also you can think about unnatural resources. Well, something that can help, but not always is going to be the case. In fact, here I think we have the case of Japan, which is a really small economy. So, natural resources, there are any kind, it's really small. But instead of that, instead of being a poor economy, we observe that this economy is really productive. So, you really need natural resources. You don't have to. Is something good? Yeah, it can be, but it's not really necessary. It's not so important that some people feel it. Well, what is going to be the key of differences in growth? Economic policies. So all the things that are really good thought, and it's in terms of improving any of those indicators that we were talking about. So, first of all, we need to save. Saving is something really important to make in the future any kind of investment. So that's why in microeconomics we have like two kinds of people. People who is telling us, no, don't save, consume, because consumption is production, and then you are going to face any kind of crisis or bad situation. But the economist that is thinking about the long run is going to tell you just the opposite. No, save money, because in the long run we need to invest, and the only way of making an investment is with the money that you are saving. So that's why, though both of them are economists, they are going to ask you the opposite. Education, so investment is not just in physical but also in institutions that are going to provide education that is going to be really important, more important than those natural resources. Research and development. Well, something interesting about this research and development. At the very beginning of one economy, when I'm telling very beginning of one economy, is when this economy starts to be richer or develop or have development inside. The thing that we are going to observe is that the technology is going to grow really fast. Why is that? How is that? It was like the case of the Spain no long time ago. It's because we didn't have any kind of technology. And at the beginning, the easy thing is buying technology, buying patents, or even copy, which is cheaper. Right? Like sometimes in China, they do that. So at the beginning, getting technology is something relatively easy. The problem comes when you are a consolidated economy, you have already reacted the current technology, and the next step is making an investment in innovation, in technology. The case of Spain, the investment is really small. Why is that? Because you can make a big investment, it's not really clear what is going to be the final result. So because it has a risk, better don't do it. That is the way of thinking for many companies here. In fact, also it's connected with the fact that big part of the industry is in the real sector, in the real estate sector or services where technology is not really important. So though we have been a good time to save money and then make any kind of investment in technology, it wasn't the case. Well, importance more. Well, this is just a different example. Yes, I think it basically, well, infrastructure, of course, something really important, but that is connected with international trade, and that's all. So here you have some reference.